Ladies and gentlemen, the following podcast is set for one episode. Your host from Columbus, Ohio, is Michael Kirk. Welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast. Hello and welcome to the Outlaw Mudcast, your digital audio dirt sheet for all things Supershow. And there's quite a bit to talk about on today's episode. We had sort of the first inklings of 2020 vision. We have some Kickstarter news. But unfortunately, before we get into any of that, I have to talk about something that came to light the day after our last show was posted. For those of you who are new listeners, previously I had a co-host who recorded the show with me, a gentleman by the name of Nathan Wagner. Well, this past Monday, it came to light that, I'm sorry for the hesitation, folks. This is very tough for me to say. So some of you may have seen on Talk of the Universe, they've talked about an individual where some negative things happened regarding this individual and the selling and trading aspect of our game. They declined to name names. Unfortunately, I feel like I can't do that because Nate was such a prominent fixture on this podcast that I have to at least mention him. So it came out essentially on Monday that the former co-host of this show essentially was involved in sort of two, for lack of a better term, scams on the community. That one, he was selling product and then not delivering said product. And two, he was just outright borrowing money from people and never paying it back. I wish I didn't have to talk about this because I wish these type of things didn't affect our community. But I do. And I need to address it because he was the co-host for such a long time. And I'm upset about it. I'm sad. I'm angry. I'm very unhappy that this gentleman who I took a chance on, for those of you who aren't aware of this, when I started this show, it was just me. But I actually thought very early on this show could use a co-host, just because it would add a different dimension to the show, being able to banter back and forth, have discussions. And so I've been thinking about it, and I had this gentleman, Nathan Wagner, who was new to the show, new to the community, reach out to me and ask if he could help, if he could be a co-host. And since I was already leaning that way, I took a chance and said, sure, come on the show. And we recorded a lot of good episodes together. We interviewed a lot of people. He's responsible for Steve Resk being on the show. So it's very difficult to sort of have to talk about this now, but this man has done something that has damaged our community, the games community, our community, the Supershow is not the same because of him. And so, as a guy who gave him a platform, which probably gave him credibility in the community, more so than if he'd just been a guy, I regret giving him that platform. And I hope that me giving him this platform did not help him swindle people out of money. I deeply regret now, knowing what he's done, having had him on the show, even though he contributed to great moments in this podcast, this has really been a bitter pill to swallow. And so on behalf of the Outlaw Mudcast, I apologize for helping, or if in any way him being the co-host help somebody decide, yes, I'll help this guy out monetarily, yes, I'll buy from him, and not you. It's very difficult to say, but I'm just very unhappy and very upset. I'm deeply regretful that this is how our partnership turned out. That at the end of the day, this guy that I gave a chance to and helped build up in the community by having him be the co-host of this podcast abused the trust of the community to swindle money. So for that, I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I ever gave that guy a platform, that I invited him in here, knowing now that he would ultimately abuse the people of our community. And that's really all I have to say about that. That, and if he contacts you and wants to make a trade or sell you something or ask to borrow money, I would recommend not doing so. And it hurts me to say, because I had a lot of trust in this guy. I tagged with him at the Grand Gathering. We were part of a faction together. We hosted dozens of episodes of this show. And sort of to know, how widespread his rot ended up being really, really bothers me. And it bothers me to have to start an episode where I should be talking about 2020 vision and Kickstarter news and all these other things, that instead I have to talk about my former co-host doing wrong. So that's all that is the extent to which I'm going to address this, and hopefully I will not have to address anything further in the future on this topic. But now let's start with the 2020 vision stuff that came out. Talk of the Universe this past Wednesday. So, we found out quite a few things. First, there's going to be a new version of Ariel Lipstick that's going to come out. So, to give you a recap on the old version, the original version of Ariel Lipstick, singles competitor, with the following skills and gimmick: Power 5, Technique 6, Agility 9, Strike 10, Submission 7, Grapple 8. When you roll power for your turn roll, your opponent buries 2 cards in their hand. Now, it's turned out, after sort of a couple years of her being in existence, looking how she is with the community, they have decided to do 2 things. Number one, they're going to turn her into a printed tag team card with that same gimmick. And they're going to replace her in the singles with a new competitor card with the same skills, but a different gimmick. The new gimmick is going to be, when you roll power for your turn roll, draw 1 card, and your opponent buries 1 card in their hand. Now, I do say I like this gimmick better. I do think it will be a more balanced gimmick, because the hand destruction will not be so severe. So I do approve of this change, and I do approve of the idea of the gimmick is strong enough it should be in a tag team card. Printed tag team cards do have stronger gimmicks than regular singles competitors, which leads into the Immortal Warrior and Vic the Brick cards. The next change they announced is these 2 cards, instead of being Immortal and Brick, they're going to become printed tag team cards called the Immortal Brick Bros. There's going to be 2 versions of Immortal Brick Bros. One version will be the Immortal Warrior version, and one version will be the Vic the Brick version. The Immortal Warrior version will just have the same gimmick as the Immortal Warrior does currently, but the skills will be doubled. The Vic the Brick version will have the Vic the Brick gimmick, and the skills of Vic the Brick will be doubled. So, whereas, for example, Immortal Warrior has Power 9, Technique 10, on the new version will be Power 18, Technique 20. Now, both versions have the same Immortal Brick Brothers logo, so it does appear that and I'm assuming that there will be Immortal Brick Brothers finishers created with these, but the two different versions will have different character logos. So, for example, the Immortal Warrior version has the Immortal Warrior logo, so you can run Immortal Warrior finishes, as well as Immortal Brick Brother finishers. The Vic the Brick version has the Vic the Brick logo on it, so you can run Vic the Brick finishers as well as Immortal Brick Brothers finishers. I don't know for sure, but I'm assuming they will put that out just because a pretty tag team really should have tag team finishers that go with it, if for nothing else, just for the skill bonuses. Because obviously, because the skills are doubled, you want to have finishers that have higher skill bonuses. Now, those are the first changes that are going to be part of the 2020 edition. The next changes are that Grimm and the GM John Calais competitor cards will no longer be allowed in SRG Universe official events. Anything local, including your CAC tournaments, that's going to be the decision of the local tournament runners, but at your big conventions where SRG is running the show, those competitors are not going to be allowed. Grimm's got an interesting gimmick, and in and of itself, it's not bad. The problem with Grimm is essentially that, especially as the roster has grown, it is very difficult to see all the potential interactions. Because what Grimm does is it allows you to essentially take a gimmick that was created for one competitor and use it on Grimm to where, for example, if a competitor has one particular set of skill values, and a gimmick is designed for those skill values, it might be that the gimmick works better on Grimm. For example, Thomas Gordon won Gen Con Underworld tournament with Grimm and the Fireball's gimmick. The reason is that when Fireball's gimmick triggers, for Grimm, it essentially takes Grimm's skills from 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5 to 10, 10, 9, 8, 6, 5. It boosts 3 skills up by 1, which is very strong. Grimm with Candace LeRae, which is what Chris Pagillo used to win the Rumble at the Rumble last year, gives Grimm a second 10. It boosts his 9 skill to a 10 skill with her gimmick. These were interactions that I don't even know if they were possible. I know Fireball wasn't possible because Fireball didn't exist when Grimm was created. I don't know if Candice LeRae was a competitor when Grimm was created. But it's a fun gimmick that unfortunately has been, I don't want to use the word abused, but people have realized that you can make that very strong. You can use his gimmick and his skills, and you can use a gimmick for somebody else to alter his skills in a strong way. There's various other Grimm interactions too, but they've decided that, as of right now, Grimm interactions out of the gate. And I think the big issue with GM John Calais is that he can choose submission match. Submission match takes longer than pretty much any other match type, primarily because there are no boosts to the finish rolls as the level goes up on the crowd meter. so it can make those matches last quite a while. So Calais and Grimm for right now are out. EC3, they did not make any changes to EC3. I've given my opinion. I'm not the biggest fan of the EC Splash. Of two versions of the EC Splash existing, I think it should be one or the other. But they're going to leave that alone. I kind of understand that. It's kind of on the bubble for me. EC Splash is good if you're able to hit it on the first turn. Which, if you play EC3, if you use Champion of Kickstarter with it, and you win the first turn roll, you're going to start on turn 1. You're going to have 8 cards in your hand. That's a quarter of your deck. So you've got a 1 in 4 chance, slightly better than 1 in 4 chance, of having that card in your hand because you've got 1/4 of your deck in your hand. I think that's the way the odds work out. I may be wrong, but you have a high chance of having a finish hand just because you're starting with so many cards. That's what makes the EC Splash original version so dangerous. So for those of you who don't know, EC Splash says draw 5 cards. It's the strike finish number 28. Draw 5 cards, or if this is your first turn. Sorry, I don't think there's an or. If this is your first turn, this card is also a lead. So it allows you to play the finish turn 1. Which EC3's gimmick gives him +3 to his first turn roll and lets him draw 3 additional cards. If he's using Champion of Kickstarter as his entrance card, he's getting +1 to his finish from that. So now he's, sorry, not +1 to his finish, +1 to his turn roll from that. So now he's +4 to his turn roll. And he's drawing an additional card from the Champion of Kickstarter. So he gets +4, 7 cards. If he wins a turn roll, which +4 is pretty good to win a turn roll, now he's got 8 cards in his hand and increased ability to play that original EC Splash. I don't have that original version of EC3. I have the EC3 with the second version of EC Splash, which simply says draw 5 cards, which is not nearly as strong as the original EC Splash. But they've decided to leave that alone. They've decided to leave Champion of Kickstarter alone. I don't even understand why there'd be an issue with Champion of Kickstarter. You draw a Champion of Kickstarter, for those who are familiar, at the start of the match. You draw 1 card, you flip 1 card, your first turn roll is +1, and then once per match, when you have no cards in play, you can play a card with kick in the name and make that card unstoppable. It's a nice opening bonus, but primarily that only works once per match. And there are very few times for a lot of players that the kick making the kick unstoppable comes into play. I've used it a few times just to play kick as a lead and just used it. The strategy for a lot of people would be to use Crane Kick late game. Crane Kick's a skill card. You need +8, you need an 8 or greater technique to run it. I believe at Crowd Meter 2, it's a follow-up and a lead. It's normally just a follow-up. So I've seen people do that. Play the Crane Kick, use the Kickstarter to make it unstoppable, and then they can throw a finish next turn. There's also a tech with Zack Sabre Jr., where his penalty kick, when he has I believe it's when he has no cards in deck, his finish strike, which is called penalty kick, can be played as a lead. And so when he has no cards in deck, he can play the penalty kick, and he can use the Champion of Kickstarter to make it unstoppable. Those are sort of the times when that works. But outside of that, I don't think Champion Kickstarter is that bad, especially because we've had so many entrance cards added to the game. This time a year ago, like I discussed on previous episodes talking about Director of Operations, we've had so many entrance cards added to the game. I think the dominance of Champion Kickstarter has waned a bit. It's still a good entrance card, don't get me wrong, but I would have changed it. Then the idea of putting skill requirements on certain cards like Schoolboy and Backslide. I didn't even know that was a thing that was out there being discussed. I mean, I don't even know why you would do that on Schoolboy, for example. I mean, it's a finish card where you're taking a -3 to your roll. So essentially, it's only going to be 5. When you play Schoolboy, it's going to be 5, 6, 7 plus the crowd meter. Those are the only possible things you can roll. So at best, your opponent has a 50-50 shot to break out. It's a good finish, but I don't know that you would want to throw a skill requirement on it. I never even thought about that. I can kind of see it, but I'm still not the biggest fan. And I believe those are the biggest things they talked about on the changes in 2020 Vision. It's really just going to be changes to Ariel Lipstick's, get a new gimmick, and her original is going to be either local GM choice or it's going to become a printed tag team. Same thing with Immortal and Vic the Brick. And then pretty much everything else is going to stay the same, which I don't have a huge problem with. Those were kind of the worst ones to me. EC3. The thing, EC3 gives you a great opening, but after turn 1, you can essentially start to whittle that down. He's tough, but he's beatable. I have played good players using EC3 who are using EC3 and beating them. But that's really it for the 2020 Vision stuff. Now I'm going to talk about the Kickstarter stuff. So they have announced a date for the Kickstarter. Supershow Sunday is going to be February 23rd this year, which is the day after the House Rules Gaming's CAC tournament. So hopefully those guys who are going to that, people who are traveling to that, who might be staying over, they'll take that into account, that the Kickstarter becomes live the day after. But February 23rd, and I know last year it ran 28 days. I believe last year was February 2nd or 3rd, that it finished up March 2nd or 3rd. So I'm assuming this will be the same thing. It'll start on the 23rd of February and finish up on March 23rd. Don't know that for sure, but it makes a lot of sense. But February 23rd, they're looking at noon as the start time, which will work out for us on the East Coast time, and then, of course, 3 hours earlier, 9 a.m. for the West Coast players. Like last year, there are going to be 3 tiers. The first tier is going to be a box set, and I'm assuming other things. Second tier will be an additional box set, and I'm assuming other things. Third tier will have a faction pack. There's also going to be a create a competitor tier. We don't know how many slots are going to be in that tier, which I'm assuming includes the top tier plus the create a competitor. So you back up a second. The first tier will have a box set. The second tier will have everything in the first tier, and the third tier will have everything in the first 2 tiers. So there is no upper tier where you're not getting product. That's in the lower tiers. One of those tiers will include a box set that is the tag team box set. I'm assuming that box set's going to have the 3 printed tag teams we know about: Black Lipstick, Storage Warriors, and Cryptocurrency. Again, Black Lipstick is the printed tag team of Ariel Lipstick and Sage the Wicked Witch. Storage Warriors is the printed tag team of The Masked Llama and Warehouse. And Cryptocurrency is the printed tag team of Numero Uno and the Goldstein. So I'm not sure if that's going to be in the first tier or second tier. It's going to be in one of those two. I'm kind of leaning towards second tier, but it may very well be first. I just don't know. The third tier is going to be a faction pack. I have a source who has given me some information on the faction pack, which I'll go ahead and give to you now. Again, I've only had one source telling me this, so take that with a grain of salt. The competitors in the faction pack are going to be actual SRG Universe, LFF competitors from what I know. So, for example, we know this isn't going to be the Three Kings faction pack. They've already announced the Three Kings faction pack will release at Gen Con 2020. So what I'm saying is this faction pack will not be an Inner Circle faction pack or a Crime Wave faction pack. It won't be an Impact faction pack. It's going to be made up of competitors from the LFF. 3 of them I've been aware of, I know of. The 4th remains a mystery. As far as I know, they do not. I do not know who the 4th one is. The 4th competitor could be somebody that currently exists in the Supershow, or it could be somebody who was created who fits the theme of this faction pack. I don't know, but there is a theme to this faction pack, and it does. The 4 competitors featured in the faction pack, 3 of those competitors I can confirm do already exist in the Supershow. And then I don't know about what other cards are going to be in the faction pack. I assume there's going to be a trios card because the previous faction packs have had trios cards. I assume there will be a brand new spectacle, a brand new entrance because the others had new entrances and new spectacles. I imagine there'll be quite a few new cards. But that's what I can tell you about the faction pack. It's going to feature 4 competitors, 3 of whom already exist in the Supershow. Now, outside of the 3 tiers, they've announced there's going to be a creative competitor tier, like last year. Again, we don't know how many slots, and we don't have any idea of the cost. I can tell you that last year, I'm kind of going off memory, I believe the first tier was around $30, the second tier was around $60, the third tier was, I want to say, $115, and then the creative competitor tiers were $500, $510, $520, and $530, with a different number of slots in each tier. I don't know if that's going to hold. I saw somebody speculate on the discussion forums. Third tier might be $200. I would be shocked if it was significantly higher than last year. Like I said, last year was $115 for the third tier. If it went over $150, that would be a surprise. It could, but it would be a surprise to me. But in addition to the creative competitor tiers, they've also announced a tier between third tier and creative competitor tier, and that is the Create an Alt Art card tier. So it'll be everything in the third tier, plus you'll be able to create a card. I don't know if it's going to be 1 through 30 or 1 through 27. It sounded like they said 1 through 30, so you'd be able to create generic finishes. Now, I don't know how that's going to work. I don't know if essentially it's going to be, I assume it'll be first come through, first serve. So if you win, if you're the first person to buy that tier, you'll be able to pick the first card, and so on and so forth. And the numbers will go up or down. I really don't know. But you'll be able to create an alt art version of a card that already exists. You can't create a new card. But let's say, for example, you want to create an alt art version of Punch. You can buy in, and if number 1 slot's available, you can create that alt art Punch. If you want to show yourself, punching your rival in the mouth, you can do that. If I wanted to create a version of a Bear Hug at number 15, that would show Ursus, say, putting Funtime Bob, since I lost my match in round 1 to Funtime Bob. Ursus puts Funtime Bob in a Bear Hug. I could do that. Anything you want to do, you could essentially create. And it's any card 1 through 30. So if you're looking to create a card that you've been having a hard time getting, if you're Brian Waitford Schmidt and you've been trying to get that blindside suplex, you could create your own blindside suplex, and then you would get it in the Kickstarter. So there is that, and I believe that's all the information on that the Kickstarter have for right now. Oh no, let me take that back. They have announced a couple of these stretch goals. I mentioned on an earlier version of that the hyper forearm kicker hold choke, they said was going to be for the first 100 people to sign up and back the Kickstarter. Again, I still hope that they are not so strict on that. I would hate to see someone be the 101st person who backs in, 30 minutes of the Kickstarter opening, and now they don't get that card because they were just, not quick enough on the trigger. I believe they've also said that the card, which I talked about earlier, the Atomic Chicken Wing, the lead submission that becomes a finish if the hyper forearm kicker hold choke is in play. That will be a stretch goal, and I want to say they said it's a stretch goal if the Kickstarter is fully funded within the first 48 hours of the Kickstarter going live, which I can 100% see doing. I think we fully funded the Kickstarter last time in around that much time. We ultimately doubled the funding of the Kickstarter. I believe it was $20,000 last year, and we ended up getting just a little over $40,000, which is what enabled us to get the Hall-Tane competitor set. The Hall-Tane competitor set, that was a rough one, because the Hall-Tane competitor set that we'd hit the goal, and then some people at the last minute dropped down goals, and ended up, we went under for a little bit, and then I think somebody bought us back up. I want to say that was Chris Pagilla who bought an additional Kickstarter and helped us get back on there. But that was a rough time for a while. Which, let me also bring this up today in interest on the Kickstarter discussion. This is also something the Kickstarter last year. When you signed up to be part of the Kickstarter, the payment is not required until the Kickstarter closes. So if you come in on February 23rd and jump in and pledge, you don't have to pay until that closes, which I believe it's going to be about a month later. So you have a month from the time you make your Kickstarter pledge until the time payment comes due. Also, for people who are looking to maybe get those early pledges in, you can, especially if you're not trying to buy a Create a Competitor or create an alt art card, you can buy in at the bottom level and then always up your level. I believe you can even buy in with just money. Like you could just give, $1 to become one of the first 100 people. And then later on you can upgrade if you need to upgrade. There are quite a few options for doing the Kickstarter where you don't have to basically say, okay, I'm committing a few $100 immediately, and now if I don't have that $100 on February 23rd, I guess I can't back. No, you're absolutely able to, I believe, come in at a lower level, upgrade, like I said, as long as you're not looking to get in that Create a Competitor or create an all-art card slot, because I imagine those are going to go pretty quick. But yeah, I'm encouraging people to go in and pledge for the Kickstarter, because it just, even if you're not getting the Create a Competitor option or the Create a Card option, if you're just getting the basic card option, you get so much. Last year I went through talking about how much you got when you pledged for the Kickstarter, just the insane amount of product you were getting for $115. I believe, because if you look at it as it's $15 a competitor set, which is what it is online, you're getting so many competitor sets when you pledge for the Kickstarter. It's basically everything else is free. I mean, last year we got a lot of stretch goals because we got the starter sets, we got the Combat Crystal Lawman Nick, we got a few music cards. I imagine there'll be more music cards this year. Those are the cards with the QR code on them, where you read the QR code and it'll play on like a mobile device, and it will play the music for that competitor, the entrance music. I imagine there'll be some of those this year, stretch goals. And clearly, as we get closer and closer to February, I mean, we're still over 6 weeks out at this point. As we get closer and closer to February 23rd, we'll know more and more. But that, as of right now, is the Kickstarter news that's come out. The last bit of, well, no, there's 2 more bits of card news I want to talk about. The first is, and this is actually kind of snuck up on me. It's been a bit of a surprise, just because it doesn't seem like it's should have happened so soon. But we're only 2 weeks away from PAX South. PAX South will be, I believe, a week from this Friday. It's January 5th as I record this. So I believe that's what, 3rd, 10th. The 17th through the 19th of January is going to be PAX South. I would check out Bob Huff from Texas Supershow. Has put out a lot of information about PAX South, guides for food and lodging and whatnot. So I'd check out Bob Huff. He's the man behind Powerbomb Online. So you maybe go to powerbomb.online.com or just check out the Super Show discussion group on Facebook. He's been putting up a lot of stuff about PAX South. But PAX South, just under 2 weeks. They've announced what the promo cards for PAX South will be. And these promo cards actually tie into the Kickstarter because the Kickstarter theme, last year it was the Uprising. The year before was the Knockdown. This year, it's Going Over. The Super Show Going Over is the theme of this year's Kickstarter. And, as such, the next promo cards for PAX South will be 3 Going Over cards. It's going to be going over the kendo stick, going over the steel chair, and going over the ring steps. So, PAX Unplugged, we had the just kendo stick, steel chair, and ring steps. Now we are into, those were the 1 through 3s. Now we're doing the 4 through 6s. These are very interesting. Each one is slightly different. The first one, going over the kendo stick, the lead strike number 4, says, if the crowd meter is 1 or less, stop and follow grapple, draw 1 card, or choose 1 card your opponent has in play and discard it. The lead grapple number 5, going over the steel chair, says, if the crowd meter is 1 or less, stop any follow-up submission, draw 1 card, or shuffle 1 card from your discard pile into your deck. And the third card, the lead submission number 6, going over the ring stats, says, if the crowd meter is 1 or less, stop any follow-up strike, draw 1 card, or your opponent randomly buries 1 card in their hand. So the first thing noticed right away when they showed these cards about Givers is the stops only work if the crowd meter is 1 or less. Now this is the opposite of the previous going over the ladder, going over the table, going over the steel chain. Those are the crowd meter is 1 or greater. This is if it's 1 or less. I would have rather they made this if the crowd meter is 2 or less, just because it seems like 1 or less is just a little too soon. I mean, you only have 2 crowd meters you can use this card at, and if you're playing New York rules, only 1 crowd meter level. These cards are only good as stops for a very short amount of time. Whereas the other stops, okay, yes, they're not good at crowd meter 0, but once you hit crowd meter 1, they're good for the rest of the game. These are only good for a small amount of time in the game. So if you're not able to use them at crowd meter 0, and you're not able to use them at crowd meter 1, they're as stops, they're dead for the rest of the game. Now they do have these other effects, which are nice effects. I mean, for example, I played the Hurricane, the Elite Grapple, allowing you to shuffle 1 card from your discard deck is a good effect. For a Kenny Omega player or a Velvet Assassin player, the Lead Strike, allowing you to choose a card your opponents to play and discard it, ties right into your gimmick. For Barrier people, the Ring Steps card has that barrier, ties into that, or just as another way to barrier cards in hands. They're nice cards. I like them. My view is I would have made them 2 or less. I think 1 or less is a little too strong, especially because there are a lot of cards that bump the crowd meter. I mean, Boy Howdy, although not a lot of people play Boy Howdy. Johann Sibelius, you can very quickly get up to crowd meter 2 with him if the rolls bounce the right way. And, that's it. Those are now dead stops. So, I'm just, I don't know if you'd want to... I'm just not sure how playable those are going to end up being. That's my concern. I don't know how many people are going to want to gamble. Like I said, especially all the New York players playing New York rules. I mean, essentially, the crowd meter goes up 1 time, they don't stop anything. That's not great. But it's an interesting wrinkle in the game. I could see, you know what? I could see these being used in some sealed games or some things like the hardcore tournament or the birdcage tournament. These cards getting seeded into those games, and those would be very interesting to see played in those situations. But I just don't know how much play they're going to get in constructed. So yeah, so that's it. PAX South, I believe, is in San Antonio, Texas. I won't be there. I'm not sure who is going to be there outside of the Texas guys, and of course, the boss and the GM. I know Loudmouth Leo and Mysterious were there last year. Loudmouth, of course, became the PAX South heavyweight champion. Won that tournament. That sort of started his year of success off. Mysterious herself won the tag team tournament. So you had those two have just a great start to the year at PAX South. Will they come back? Will they defend? Will they repeat? We'll see. I know that Kirk Polka from the Inner Circle from the New World Order was out there. He made the finals of both. Came short. Maybe he'll come back this year. I'm not sure if Danny Thunder is going to come out and join the Inner Circle. I think he did last year. Make the trip over from Arizona. But we could see quite a big crowd, and hopefully we'll pick up some more players from PAX South and a little bit of a bigger presence. But that's going to be in just a couple weeks, and then I believe it's the week after that is when Highlander Games in Boonton, New Jersey is going to host the Rumble at Highlander. And I'm assuming SRG Groups will do something for the Royal Rumble. Last year they had a sale on their website where you bought essentially a spot in the Royal Rumble. They actually ended up having 2 sets of the male Royal Rumble and 1 for the women's Royal Rumble, where you bought a spot, and it was like it was a $20 spot, but it was the same price as you got a card with it. So like I bought one of the face kicks. I think I bought running face kick, which was $20 anyway. So for the cost of that card, I got an entry into the Royal Rumble, where they randomly gave you a number 1 through 30, and if your competitor won from 1 through 30, I think you got to. I can't remember if it was a creative competitor, but it was something pretty good. It was a pretty good prize for winning. I ended up getting Tamina, I think at number 10, which was a bust. But the number 10 in the men's was Seth Rollins, who won the whole thing. So I read some like, if I could just gotten that in the men's. But, for the price of a card, you get the chance to a good card. If you're so inclined, if they do that again this year, you'll get a chance to win a good prize. So if they end up doing an event like that, I'd recommend going into it if you're so inclined. You don't have to do anything, but I thought for paying the retail price of a card, I got this entry to where I could have won something better. So I didn't see any downside in doing it. It wasn't like I felt like I overpaid for the card. I paid the regular retail value of the card and got a chance at something better. So we'll see if they do anything. I'm expecting it, but we don't know. The Rumble at Highlander, let me give that information since I just talked about that. Again, Boonton, New Jersey, Highlander Games, the 26th, I believe, of January. 11 o'clock, they're going to have a traditional CAC tournament to start it. Then they're going to have a Grand Battle Payoff Pack tournament. I believe currently for at least another week, they're running a special where if you buy in early, you'll pay 1 entrance fee for both. And it's a reduced cost entrance fee. Outside of that, each one has its own entrance fee. I want to say it's $25 for the creative competitor and $15 for the Grand Battle, but I could be wrong. But but look into that if you're going to be out there, if you're going to go to that tournament. I imagine a lot of the New York guys are going to be there. I imagine you'll see some of the AU players from the Philadelphia area, the New Jersey players. Now you can see some of the guys from RCW come down. Bob Dunn's always a factor. He could show up and be in the mix. We'll just have to see. But that tournament's going to happen soon. And speaking of the New York guys and Bob Dunn, of course, our current Tornado Tag Champion is John Polverino. John Polverino released earlier this week. He will finally have himself in the game as a competitor. John Press 1P. At the time I'm recording this, he does not release any of the finishers as far as I know. But let me give you the stats and gimmick for the competitor card. John Press 1P, Power 10, Technique 9, Agility 6, Strike 8, Submission 7, Grapple 5. Your strike cards have the added text, flip 2 cards, add 1 grapple from your discard pile to your hand. Your Schoolboy and Backslide have blank text. So right away I see Power 10 with a strike of 8, probably running 7 seals as one of the skill cards, and then probably running Single Leg Crab as the other. I will say I was kind of surprised for this gimmick. For those of you who may not be familiar with this, it's the same gimmick as Johnny Gargano and Ember Wolf. The difference is, for Gargano, it's the grapple cards have the text where you can add a submission, and the Ember Wolf's gimmick is the submission cards have the added text where you can add a strike. So this is the third in that. This completes the cycle. There's now 1 card for all 3. There's now 1 card for all 3 sort of sets. I'm kind of surprised on this because I thought John Polverino would have done something a little more just different. Not just, this isn't even the second version of this gimmick. It's the third version of this gimmick we have in the game. It's a good gimmick. I love Johnny Gargano. Prior to winning Bound for Glory, my best tournament result ever was using Johnny Gargano. So I like the Johnny Gargano gimmick. I also like that in his version, he did at least make a step to prevent him from just spamming Schoolboy and Backslide, or Backslide, because you can't run both. So I do like that he at least took that step to make it so you can't spam the Schoolboy over and over. But I just kind of wish he did something a little different. But I can't fault him for picking that gimmick. It's a great gimmick. But that's going to be the John Press 1P gimmick. Hopefully we'll see him do some great things actually using his own competitor card. I'm assuming that if he basically created this, he's got some tech in mind. Even taking out the Schoolboy and Backslide, I imagine he'll build this deck and we'll see quite a few surprises with it. But that's the last competitor card that's been released. Talked about the upcoming events for this month. Touched on the upcoming event for next month. Oh yeah, and so speaking of events, SRG Universe earlier today released the convention schedule for this year. Now, they don't have anything in there for Dragon Con. They don't have... I know they went out same time they did PAX Unplugged. They went out and did a convention on the West Coast. That's not mentioned here. It could just be that those are pending. I know I reached out and posted in the forums when I saw that Dragon Con wasn't mentioned, and Steve said they just can't confirm at the moment. So it's possible that's still in the works. It's possible there are other conventions still in the works, but that they happen during the year. I noticed, for example, ArmorCon, that was last year, is not on this list, but here's the list that they've released. I'm assuming these are going to be the confirmed conventions for 2020. Like I mentioned earlier, PAX South, San Antonio, Texas, January 17th through 19th. Level Up Expo is going to be in Las Vegas, Nevada, February 21st through 23rd. That is the same weekend as the CAC in Kissimmee, Florida. I know that they've announced that, of course, it's the home of the SCW, Sin City Wrestling, so Eddie Fury and the Salty Sailor will be out there. I believe I've seen that Leo the Law will be out there as well for that. PAX East is going to be February 27th through March 1st in Boston, Massachusetts. I'm assuming we'll get a heavy RCW presence there. Grand Gathering 2 is April 24th through 26th at Louisville, Kentucky. They mentioned something during Talk of the Universe. I could not make out entirely what the thing that Steve said was. It sounded something like Farragut Springs. The first word is the word I'm unsure about. So if anyone's in that area and knows what that is, that's quite a spoiler for where the Louisville, Kentucky's Grand Gathering may be. Of course, my own hometown, Origins, 17th through the 21st, they're going to be here in Columbus. Just a little over 6 weeks from that, Gen Con is going to be the July 30th through the 2nd in Indianapolis. And, of course, PAX Unplugged will end the year November 20th through 22nd in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania. So a little earlier this year than it was last year. But that is the convention schedule they have put out that we know for sure at this point they have committed to. Again, there could be additional conventions, but those are the conventions right now. And let me see if there's anything else I want to bring up. Talk about the convention schedule, Kickstarter, new releases. They did talk about another new competitor that's going to be coming out. I believe his name is Terror Skull. From what it sounded like, he's going to be in the same box set as Rainbow Girl. Rainbow Girl is also going to come out as part of this Kickstarter. I'm guessing we'll get a full version. Right now, we've only just have a competitor card only version. We're going to get a full version. We're going to get this new character named Terror Skull. When I first saw a glimpse of him, I thought he kind of looked like Darby Allin. They put out an image of him on Top of the Universe. He's on the ad for the Kickstarter. I'm actually going to post that in the forums later tonight when this is done. All the screenshots I took from Top of the Universe this week for all the cards that are coming out that I got screenshots of. But Rainbow Girl and Terror Skull will apparently be in the Kickstarter. I'm also wondering now if Steve Slambros is going to be in the Kickstarter. Steve Slambros has been out forever with no finishers, just as a pre-release competitor card. So I'm wondering if this may be the year we see him get some finishers. We also should see Hollow King debuting. I talked about Hollow King last week. Apparently he only has one finish card, a submission finish. So I'm looking forward to seeing that. Wonder if we'll get some Pretty Boy Snow finishers coming out at some point. That could even be a stretch goal in the Kickstarter. But quite a lot of things to be excited about coming up for the Supershow. But I think that is going to do it for this week's episode. I don't believe I have any other news to talk about. Oh! Of course, I forgot there's one more thing I forgot about. And that is the Create a Competitor competition, the 2019 CCC. Round 1 is finally over. Let me give you the winners. Of course, this week, after that we were posted last week, they announced the match. I believe the participants were Neil Strongarm, Bobby Ohio, Sin, Ricky Riot, and give me 1 minute, BB Lotech. That was the other one. And Ricky Riot actually ended up pulling that out. He was down for a while, but Ricky Riot ended up pulling that out. Ricky Riot is the final entrant in the CCC. So let me give you the gentlemen who have gone on, who have made it out of the first round of the CCC. Those gentlemen are, and ladies, we did have one women win, Ludwig Maniacal Uberstar, Nanik of the North, James Hand Productions, The Big Guy, Steel Wool, Sherry Von Danish, Funtime Bob, The Trash Man, Hold the Line Harry, and Ricky Riot are the 10 competitors that made it out of round 1. Now, we had 9 matches, but because James Hand Productions and Hold the Line Harry were so close in their match, both gentlemen advanced. That's why we have 10 winners, even though we only had 9 matches, which means there are 2 wildcard spots Those 2 wild cards will be announced on Talk of the Universe this week. So we're going to see who the 2 wild card participants are going to be. I'm hoping Ursus is one. We'll see. I don't know if he will. Even if he is, I don't know if he'll make it on. I mean, again, we've lost 4 straight times in the CCC. Every time we've gone up. And I don't know who we would beat out of these competitors. They're all very strong. I mean, if Ursus couldn't beat Fun Time Bob once, I don't see him beating him a second time, even in a narrower field. But if he does make the wild card, it's good, because the more he's out there, the more likely he will eventually get made. So I'm pulling for him. I just don't know if there's any chance or not. But that's the last bit of news I'm going to cover this week. This has been a longer one than we've had for a while. So I'm going to give the list of play groups, and then we're going to wrap it up. We're going to start, as we usually do, with my own local play group here in Columbus, Ohio, Buckeye Championship Wrestling. We normally play at the Guard Tower Saturday nights at 6 p.m. Unfortunately, got canceled again this week. But next week, we're looking to have one of our bigger events. It's going to be at the Guard Tower East, I believe, on the 11th, starting at 3 p.m. instead of 6. So I would check first before committing, because we've been canceled. But I'm assuming that's going to be kind of our last big event, especially because I know that a couple of the players here are going to go on the Cruise of Jericho, which is going to happen later this month. Does not look like Supershow is going to be back on the Cruise of Jericho this year. Maybe next year, but who knows? Right now, that's not the case. But BCW, Saturdays at 6. Rust Belt Wrestling. Recess games in North Homestead, Ohio. They play Monday nights at 6. They've also been playing Sundays around noon. They just started doing that last week. They did it again this week. Had their Sunday Fun Day champion. So we could see a bit coming out from them on Sundays. LFF Tri-State plays at a store of Fire and Dice in Lynbrook, New York, Thursdays at 7. City of Champions Wrestling plays at Titan Game Shop in Hopewell, Pennsylvania, Saturday or Sunday at noon. I checked them. Florida Cardboard Wrestling, who's having a CAC next month, they play at House Rules Gaming in Kissimmee, Florida, Sunday nights at 6:30. New Order Wrestling plays at Pandemonium in Wessel, Michigan, Thursdays at 4:30. And the other Wessel, Michigan group plays at Destiny Games Wednesdays at 6:30 p.m. The final group, the Skull Group, the Supershow Kalamazoo Underground League, plays at Fanfare Comics in Kalamazoo, Michigan, the second and fourth Sunday of every month, starting at noon. Sin City Wrestling. This plays at Atomic Trading in Las Vegas, Nevada, Wednesday nights at 6. Of course, they're going to have a big presence at Level Up Expo later this month. Next month, February 21st through 23rd. Wizards Card Championship Wrestling plays at Wizards Asylum Comics and Games in Norman, Oklahoma. I will check with them because they don't have a regular date and time. Revolutionary Championship Wrestling plays at 3 locations, to the best of my knowledge. They play at New England Comics in New Bedford, Massachusetts, Wednesdays from 3 to 6, and Saturdays from 11 to 4. They play at Tabletop Games in Westport, Massachusetts, Tuesdays from 3:30 to 6. And they play at Game King in Fall River, Massachusetts, Sundays from 5 to 9 p.m. Island of Life Wrestling plays at East End Gaming in Oakdale, New York, Wednesdays and Fridays. Outpost Wrestling plays at Outpost Games in Glendale, Arizona, Saturdays from 11 to 2. Meatful People Wrestling plays at Highlander Games in Boonton, New Jersey. Again, that's going to be the site of Rumble at Highlander in just a few weeks. We have 2 groups that play at the Ultra Versus stores in Pennsylvania. AU Bluebell in East Norton, Pennsylvania has games Thursdays at 7 p.m. And AU Holmes in Holmes, Pennsylvania has games Sundays at noon. I believe the East Norton location is also going to now be known as DWA, the Delco Wrestling Alliance. I hope that I'm correct on that. Please correct me if I'm wrong. The Asylum Championship Card Wrestling is a Georgia group. They play weekly, Monday nights from 7 to 10 at Heroic Gaming in Roswell, Georgia. And then the last Saturday of every month, starting at noon, they play at Gigabytes Cafe in Marietta, Georgia. And we recently had a new group come on the scene. I don't have a regular date and time for them. They just had their first match just a little while ago. But the Southern Kentucky Wrestling Exchange is playing at Game Exchange in Bowling Green, Kentucky. So if you're in the Bowling Green, Kentucky area, you're looking for a play group, they're playing out there. Game Exchange, which is on Scottsville Road in Bowling Green, Kentucky. That's also just up the road from Nashville. So if you're willing to drive, if you're in the Nashville area, you could also maybe go up to there at Bowling Green. I want to say it's about an hour or so away, and catch a game there. A lot of the I saw from the posting, a lot of the players that play with the Three Kings went ahead out there. So it's going to be a good group of players to play with if you end up going to the SWX events out there at Game Exchange in Bowling Green. And that's going to do it for our list of local pro groups. I hope I did not miss anything. If I did miss something that you thought I should have covered, if you have any questions or leave me feedback, if you'd like me to add your play group to my list of play groups, please just reach out to me and contact me. There's a couple of different ways you can do that. You can just send me a direct message using Facebook Messenger. You can also email the show. We're outlawmudcast@gmail.com. Or you can send us a direct message on Twitter. We are at Outlaw Mudcast on Twitter. And that's going to do it for today's show. Thank you, and good day.